Shin was a weak and shy boy with very little confidence. People saw him as a boring nerd with no charm. His life suddenly changes when a strange alien parasite attacks him and takes over his right hand. At first, Shin is scared and wants to get rid of the creature, but slowly, he begins to accept it. This strange partnership will later make him fight other dangerous parasites that secretly eat humans. The story begins when Shin wakes up one morning. As he opens his eyes, he hears a faint voice saying that it is unfortunate that it failed. This scares him, but he quickly thinks it must have been a strange dream from the night before. He goes downstairs for breakfast, where his parents ask if he is feeling okay. They say he was acting very strangely the previous night. Shin cannot clearly remember what happened, which confuses him. Feeling uncomfortable, he decides to skip breakfast and leave for school. While walking to school, his crush Morirano suddenly jumps from behind to scare him. But before he can react, his right hand moves by itself and blocks her attack. Morirano is surprised by his quick reflexes. Shin is confused and says that his hand moved on its own. Right after that, Shin acts strangely around her. Morirano becomes embarrassed and slaps him before running away. Their friend Takai sees this and jokingly says that this is what happens when someone has no experience with girls. At school, Shin quickly falls asleep in class because he did not sleep well the previous night. In his sleep, he remembers what really happened. While he was sleeping, a strange parasite tried to enter his brain through his ear, but his earphones blocked the way. Then the parasite tried to enter through his nose, but Shin sneezed and woke up. For a moment, he saw the creature and thought it was a snake. Suddenly, it jumped onto him and started digging into his right hand. Shin quickly tied his arm tightly with his earphone cord, which stopped the parasite from spreading further into his body. His parents rushed into the room after hearing the noise. When Shin tried to explain what happened, his father thought he was imagining things and joked that he must be seeing things. Shin suddenly wakes up from this memory and realizes he is in class. His teacher is standing in front of him, angry because Shin was using his phone during the lesson. Shin tries to explain, but the teacher does not believe him. Later, Morirano is still angry at him, and Takai tries to calm things down because she is worried about Shin. Feeling stressed and confused, Shin decides to go home early. On the way home, he sees a girl crossing the street carelessly while a car is coming fast toward her. Without thinking, Shin runs forward to protect her. To his shock, his right hand stops the moving car. Shin cannot believe what he just did. When he looks at his hand, it suddenly changes shape and a strange eye appears in his palm. A moment later, it returns to normal. Completely frightened, Shin runs home. In his room, he panics and tries to stab his right hand. Suddenly, the hand transforms into a strange alien creature that speaks in broken sentences. It explains that it failed to take control of his brain and only managed to take over his right hand after consuming it. Shin tries to attack it again, but the creature easily breaks the knife. Then it calmly asks Shin to teach it how to speak properly because it is still learning. After that, it suddenly falls asleep and his hand returns to normal. The next morning, Shin wakes up and sees the alien reading books to learn about the world. It can now speak clearly and shows great intelligence. When Shin asks where it came from, the creature says it does not know. It only remembers waking up inside his arm and feeling disappointed because it failed to take over his brain. This makes Shin panic even more. However, the alien quickly explains that it cannot do anything now because it has already eaten his arm and replaced it. If it had taken over his head instead, then it would have controlled his whole body. Shin says he will go to the hospital right away and have his strange right hand cut off, but the alien says that would be a terrible idea. It survives by using Shin's nutrients, so if the hand is cut off, it will die. Shin would also lose his arm forever. The creature even says that his hand now has a mouth and can change its shape. Shin angrily calls it a parasite. The creature replies that they should simply cooperate and live together. Right after saying this, the parasite suddenly becomes tired and falls asleep, and Shin's hand returns to normal. Later, Shin goes downstairs for breakfast. While eating, he hears his father reading the newspaper. His father talks about a series of terrible and violent crimes called the mincemeat murders. These strange murders have been happening recently. After breakfast, Shin heads to school. On the way, he thinks that maybe he should go to the police and tell them everything about the alien in his hand. However, the parasite quickly warns him that this is a bad idea. If the authorities find out, scientists might capture them and use them for experiments. Suddenly, the parasite says that another one of its kind is nearby. It explains that parasites can sense each other through brain waves. Curious but nervous, Shin follows the direction where the parasite is sensing the other one. Soon he becomes scared because the other parasite might have taken over a human body. He does not know what he might see. His parasite continues guiding him, and they finally find a strange scene. A dog is eating the dead body of another dog. Shin is confused at first, but then he realizes the dog has been taken over by a parasite. The parasite dog looks at Shin's right hand and says that it also failed to take over the brain. At that moment, Shin's parasite senses its killing intent and quickly pulls Shin away to a safer place. Meanwhile, the parasite dog suddenly changes its body, grows wings, and flies into the sky. It soon finds Shin and his parasite hiding in a park. Shin's parasite says they must fight it there. Without wasting time, it attacks the flying dog with sharp tentacles. In one quick and precise strike, it pierces the dog's heart and kills it instantly. Everything happens so fast that Shin can hardly understand what just happened. The parasite calmly watches the dead dog's body shrink and die. It coldly says the dog lost because it did not study enough. Shin realizes that the creature inside his arm has no emotions and thinks like a cold insect. Later, Shin decides not to report the alien to the authorities. After what happened with the dog, he understands that he might be in danger without it. Since calling it the alien feels strange, he decides to give it a name. The creature suggests the name Migi, which means right in Japanese. It also says that it does not really care about names because it is neither a human nor a pet. With Migi's help, Shin soon becomes much better at sports, which surprises everyone at school. Even Morirano begins to notice him more. However, the class bully becomes jealous because he also likes her. After a game, their friend Takai brings Morirano to talk with Shin so they can forget their earlier argument. Shin finally apologizes to her. Morirano forgives him, but only if he agrees to take her out for dessert next Sunday. Morirano says she is glad that Shin apologized, but she also notices that something about him feels different now. After she leaves, Migi tells Shin that his heart rate became very high while he was talking to her. Migi concludes that Shin clearly likes the girl. At that moment, the class bully calls Shin and angrily confronts him for getting Morirano's attention. Shin tries to avoid the fight and says he cannot control what Morirano does. However, the bully suddenly attacks him. Shin becomes worried that Migi might react violently and seriously hurt the boy. Luckily, Migi holds back and only stretches out like a punch to knock the bully down. This is enough to scare the bully, and he quickly runs away. Later, Takai starts talking about the brutal mincemeat murders, the same crimes Shin's father mentioned earlier. No one knows who is responsible, but similar cases are happening all around the world. Takai thinks the situation is very suspicious. Hearing this, Shin suddenly realizes that the parasites must be behind the murders. When Shin gets home, he searches for more information about the crimes. He asks Migi about it, and Migi agrees that the murders are most likely done by parasites like him. Migi explains that parasites usually eat the same species as their host. Since they take over human bodies, it is natural for them to eat humans. Shin becomes very worried after hearing this. He wonders if he should tell the world about the parasites and try to save humanity, but Migi does not understand why he is thinking like that. According to Migi, parasites simply eat to survive, just like other living things in nature. Shin argues that human life is valuable. However, Migi replies that the only lives he cares about are his own and Shin's because he needs Shin to survive. Shin angrily calls him an insect and a parasite. Migi warns him that if he tries to expose him, he will cut off Shin's tongue so he cannot tell anyone. Terrified by this threat, Shin gives up the idea. Migi continues the argument and points out that humans eat many kinds of animals, while parasites only eat a few. From his point of view, humans might actually be worse. The next day, another parasite notices Shin and Migi. Migi senses it immediately and warns Shin they cannot find the parasite in the busy market, so Migi suggests going somewhere quieter. Shin agrees and says he wants to meet the other parasite. Migi thinks this is very dangerous and asks why Shin is not afraid. Shin answers that he wants to understand the parasites better so he can protect humans. Soon the other parasite appears in front of them. After looking at Shin's hand, it realizes that the parasite failed to take over his brain. Because Shin's human mind is still in control, the man considers them dangerous. The parasite calmly offers Migi a deal. He tells Migi to leave Shin and move into his body instead. To prove his idea, he transforms his body, cuts off his own hand, and invites Migi to join him so they can become stronger together. Shin panics and worries that Migi might accept the offer, but Migi does not move. The other parasite becomes impatient and suddenly attacks them. Migi reacts instantly and defeats him. The enemy parasite is shocked that he lost so quickly. Shin thanks Migi for saving his life. However, Migi calmly replies that he was not even sure if switching hosts was possible, so defeating him was simply the safest choice. The next day, Shin goes on a dessert date with Morirano. During their conversation, she says her parents are very scared because of the recent murders. Shin quietly wonders how she would react if she ever learned about Migi. After eating dessert, they walk through a nearby park. There they see a group of boys burying a cat in the sand and throwing stones at it for fun. Morirano feels very upset by this cruel act and says she cannot watch it. She wants to leave, but Shin steps forward instead, showing his kindness. He rescues the cat and tells the boys to stop hurting innocent animals. The boys laugh at him and throw stones at him as he turns back, but Miggy quickly catches every stone before they can hit Shin. Shin then gives the boys a very intense stare, which scares them completely. The boys quickly run away from the park. Morirano is impressed by Shin's courage. She happily grabs his hand, but suddenly she feels that something is strange about him. Because of that strange feeling, she quickly lets go of his right hand and instead holds his left hand. A few days pass, and the number of mincemeat murder cases continues to increase. The news keeps reporting brutal killings, which makes Shin feel sick and worried. At the same time, Morirano starts to notice that Shin is slowly becoming more distant and different from the person she used to know. One morning, while Shin is walking to school, Miggy suddenly senses another parasite nearby. Shin immediately becomes alert, but when Miggy points toward the school building, Shin begins to panic even more. At school, Shin nervously looks around the hallways, trying to find the parasite. Miggy warns him not to act suspicious because the other parasite might sense them too. Just then, a new teacher is introduced to the class. Her name is Miss Tamia. The moment she enters the classroom, Miggy confirms that she is the parasite. Things become even worse when they learn that Miss Tamia will be Morirano's homeroom teacher. Shin feels extremely uneasy. Miggy tells him not to stare at her, but Shin cannot help himself. Tamia notices him looking at her and quickly realizes that he is connected to a parasite too. Later during sports class, Miggy explains that Tamia must be very intelligent. She has taken over a human life and is now living normally as a teacher without anyone noticing. Shin wonders if she plans to eat the students at school. However, Miggy says she would not risk revealing her identity by attacking people so close to her. During another class, while Tamia is teaching, Miggy suddenly falls asleep. Shin becomes very nervous because he feels helpless without Miggy. He struggles to stay calm during the rest of the lesson. After the class ends, Tamia calmly tells Shin to come to the office later. Some boys in the class start teasing him, joking that the new teacher likes him. Shin angrily tells them to stop because they do not understand how serious his situation is. Later, Shin goes to the office, and luckily, Miggy wakes up just in time. Tamia calmly explains that she does not want to fight him. Instead, she invites Shin to meet her after school so they can talk properly. Miggy quickly agrees, but Shin is suspicious and worries that it might be a trap. After school, Shin meets Tamia again. Miggy suddenly senses another parasite nearby. Soon Tamia arrives with a man she calls Mr. A. Tension quickly rises between him and Miggy, but Tamia stops them from fighting. They sit down and talk. Tamia asks Shin what he thinks parasites are. Shin honestly answers that they are monsters who eat humans. Tamia understands his point, but she believes their existence may be more complicated. She then reveals something shocking. She says that she and Mr. A reproduced a few weeks ago, and now she is pregnant. Shin is horrified and wonders what kind of creature she is carrying. Miggy carefully observes and says that the baby inside her is actually a normal human child. Shin still does not trust them. During the conversation, Mr. A becomes bored and stands up. He says he will continue killing and eating humans like before and sees Shin as a possible threat. After he leaves, Tamia warns Shin not to provoke her. She says she could easily kill everyone in a classroom, including Morirano. However, she says that for now, she prefers peace and wants to keep her identity hidden. The next day at school, Takai tells Shin that she saw him on the bus the previous evening and that she and Morirano were worried about him. Shin hides the truth. Suddenly, Miggy quietly warns him that they are under attack. Tamia also realizes that the parasite inside the school is Mr. A. She calmly tells her students to study on their own and quietly steps outside the classroom. Meanwhile, Mr. A has already started attacking people inside the school. Shin knows he cannot ignore this and decides he must stop him. Miggy believes Tamia will not interfere because she usually acts logically and avoids choosing sides. Just then, an announcement comes through the school intercom, telling all students to evacuate the building immediately. Miggy suggests a plan to defeat Mr. A. He says they should hide among the escaping students and use the crowd as a distraction before attacking. Shin becomes angry when he hears this idea. He refuses to risk innocent people's lives just to win a fight. Instead, he runs upstairs alone to face the danger. On the way, he runs into Morirano. She grabs his arm and asks what is going on, but Shin pushes her away and tells her to stay far from him. He quickly continues upstairs and enters an empty classroom. Miggy says his earlier plan would have been more effective, but Shin insists on fighting in a more human way. Miggy says nothing, but he understands that humans often act based on emotions instead of logic. Shin quickly builds a barricade using desks and chairs to block the door. Then he asks Miggy if he is angry because his plan was rejected. Miggy says there is no time to worry about that and begins thinking of another strategy. He explains that the difference between them and Mr. A is that there are two of them working together. Miggy sharpens a piece of a chair leg into a sharp wooden spike and gives it to Shin as a weapon. He explains that Mr. A underestimates humans, so if Shin attacks at the right moment, they might win. Shin hides the weapon in his sleeve. Suddenly, Mr. A crashes through the window from the floor below. The broken desks and tables now trap Shin inside the classroom. Mr. A mocks Shin and says that, except for his right hand, the rest of his body is weak and scared. Shin knows that part is true. However, he remembers Miggy's warning that if he loses his courage, Miggy's abilities will also be limited, so he forces himself to calm down. Mr. A suddenly attacks them with sharp tentacles, but Miggy blocks every strike. Shin remembers the plan. Miggy will focus on defense, while Shin quietly moves closer to attack. Because Mr. A believes humans are weak, he ignores Shin completely. That becomes his biggest mistake. At the perfect moment, Shin stabs him in the chest with the wooden spike. Mr. A tries to fight back, but Miggy blocks his attacks. Shin's strike has already damaged an important artery in his heart, and blood begins pouring out quickly. Even so, Mr. A manages to throw Shin aside and pushes the spike through his body to slow the bleeding. As he struggles to move away, Miggy tells Shin they must finish him now. Shin hesitates because he does not want to kill anyone. Miggy reminds him that Mr. A is not human. Meanwhile, Mr. A realizes his body is dying. As a last attempt, he decides to find a new host and walks toward Tamiya's office. But Tamiya suddenly appears and reveals that she left oxygen cylinders open in the room. The oxygen causes a massive explosion that kills Mr. A before the police arrive. After this event, Shin feels deeply traumatized. Even though time passes, he cannot forget that he stabbed a human body. Meanwhile, Tamiya faces trouble with the school because she refuses to reveal the father of her baby. Instead of arguing with the administration, she decides to quit her job and change her identity. Before leaving, she meets Shin one last time. She tells him that since she is abandoning her identity as Tamiya, she no longer needs to protect the people connected to that life. That includes him. Shin becomes very nervous after hearing Tamiya's words. He asks her why she and the other parasites eat humans. Shin explains that Miggy survives by taking nutrients from his body, so maybe other parasites could also live by eating different kinds of food. Tamiya calmly replies that he might be right, but eating humans feels natural to them. She says it is similar to how bees fly and spiders spin webs. According to her, every living creature on Earth follows a purpose. Parasites simply follow their instinct. Tamiya explains that when she first took over a human body, she immediately felt that her purpose was to eat other humans. Shin feels terrified hearing this, but he still asks what she plans to do with the baby she is carrying. Tamiya answers coldly that she will give birth to the baby and then use it for experiments. If the child is not useful, she says she will eat it. Shin becomes furious after hearing that. Tamiya quickly senses his anger and prepares to fight. She transforms her body to attack him. Migi immediately realizes that they cannot defeat her because she can change her body in two ways at the same time. This means she is more advanced than him. However, Tamiya suddenly notices that Shin is not a completely normal human anymore. Because of his strange connection with Migi, she decides to let him live. She believes studying him might help her understand more about parasites and humans. Later that night, Tamiya receives an unexpected visitor. It is the real Tamiya's mother. The old woman quickly realizes that the person in front of her is not her daughter. She demands to know who she is and where her daughter is. Tamiya is shocked because she never thought a normal human could see through her disguise. When the woman tries to call the police, Tamiya kills her before she can do it. Afterward, Tamiya becomes curious about how the woman noticed the truth and wonders if she had some special ability. The next morning, Shin wakes up and realizes that Migi is missing from his body. He panics until he sees Migi moving around the room on his own. Migi then reattaches to his arm and explains that he discovered he can move away from Shin for about 3 minutes. Shin becomes worried and asks if Migi plans to take over his brain. Migi calmly replies that it is impossible because he developed only as an arm and cannot control a brain. However, this makes Shin think about something even scarier. He wonders if other parasites who control brains could switch heads with other bodies. Migi says that might be possible. Later, Shin goes downstairs for breakfast. His parents tell him they are planning to go on a trip. Shin becomes worried and says traveling to unknown places might be dangerous. His mother listens to him and even considers canceling the trip. She gently asks if something has been bothering him lately, but Shin does not want to reveal the truth about Miggy, so he quickly leaves for school. Shin keeps Miggy a secret because he fears that Miggy might hurt his parents if they become a threat to his survival. Miggy does not understand human emotions and only cares about staying alive. Later, Miggy starts researching guns for possible future fights. He also tells Shin not to worry too much about his parents. Parasites usually stay in crowded cities where there are many humans to hunt. They also prefer attacking people who are alone. Because of this, Miggy believes Shin's parents might actually be safer during their trip than they are in the city. Shin feels a little relieved after hearing that. Just then, his mother enters his room. Shin quickly hides Miggy. She asks who he was talking to. Shin nervously says he was talking to himself and angrily tells her to knock before entering next time. His mother feels hurt by his harsh words and quietly leaves the room. Later, she sadly tells Shin's father that their son shouted at her. Shin dad tells her that it happened because she interrupted him at a very awkward moment. Later that day, he tells his parents that he has changed his mind and now thinks it is a good idea for them to go on the trip. His mother, Nabuko, gets upset at his sudden change. She angrily asks what is wrong with him and even starts crying. She says it feels like he is not the same son anymore. Shin still does not want to tell her about Miggy, so he lies. He says that he was only worried about feeling lonely without them, but then he realized he could just invite some friends over if he felt lonely. After saying that, he goes back to his room and his parents believe his explanation. A week later, his parents leave for their trip. Nabuko is very excited because she has not had a long vacation in many years. At the same time somewhere else, a man is driving with his new girlfriend, but he does not know that she is actually a parasite. She does not understand basic human things like how seatbelts work. While he is driving, she distracts him and the car rolls down a hill. Both of them are badly injured in the crash. When the parasite realizes that her host body will not survive, she becomes desperate. She attacks the man and takes over his body instead. The takeover is not perfect, but at least she can still move. Meanwhile, Shin is walking to school and asks Miggy what Tamia meant when she called him impure. Miggy explains that some of his cells entered Shin's bloodstream and even reached his brain, so parts of Shin's body have changed. Shin is shocked and tries to convince himself that he is still a normal human. Just then, he sees a group of boys beating up the school bully. Shin tries to stop them, but they punch him and tell him to stay out of it. Shin remembers that Miggy once said humans are different from parasites because they help others even when it does not benefit them. Wanting to prove he is still human, Shin stands up for the bully again. The gang leader, Mitsuo, hits him, but before things get worse, a girl named Kana arrives and tells everyone to stop. She calls Shin stupid, but when she looks at him closely, she senses something strange inside him. She notices something unusual and becomes scared, then quickly leaves. At school, Shin gets praised for defending his classmate. Later, Shin and Murano meet Kana again. She asks why he did not run away earlier. Shin says helping a classmate in trouble is the right thing to do, but Kana thinks he is pretending and hiding something. Meanwhile, Mitsuo becomes jealous because Kana is paying attention to Shin. Wanting revenge, he and his gang attack Shin again and kidnap Murano. Shin follows them and asks them to let her go, but Mitsuo starts beating him. Migi wants to help, but Shin stops him because he wants to handle it himself. Even though he is weaker, Shin keeps fighting because he believes humans fight for others. Soon, Kana arrives and stops them. Then some boys from Shin's school appear and start fighting Mitsuo's gang. During the chaos, Shin escapes with Murano. She walks him home, treats his wounds, and tells him he looked really cool earlier. Shin gets excited and asks Murano if she wants to stay at his house since his parents are not home, but she decides to go back to her own house. Migi feels disappointed and says he wanted to observe human reproduction. Shin gets annoyed and tells him to be quiet and go to sleep. Just then, Kana suddenly appears and asks Shin who he was talking to. Shin avoids the question. Kana apologizes for how she acted earlier and says she wants to be friends with him. Shin agrees because he does not see any problem with that. But when they shake hands, Kana feels something strange from his right hand. Shin notices that she looks uncomfortable, so he quickly pulls his hand back and rushes inside his house. Inside, Migi warns Shin to stay away from Kana because she seems very perceptive. He thinks she can sense the special signal that parasites give off to find each other. Migi says that Murano also has a similar ability, but Kana's instinct is much stronger. Because of this, Migi believes Kana could be very dangerous. Shin agrees with him. Somewhere else, the parasite that took over the injured man's body is struggling because it is not used to having a male body. It wants a woman's body again and decides to take over the first woman it finds. Sadly, Shin's parents are not far away away from the monster. They are standing near a cliff and enjoying the sunset. Suddenly, the Parasyte appears and kills Nabucco right in front of Kazu. Later, Shin receives a phone call from his injured father. Kazu tells him that a monster attacked his mother and says he needs to contact the police. After saying that, the call suddenly ends. Shin becomes very worried and starts to panic. He fears that the monster might be a parasite, but he does not even know where his parents are. Exhausted and scared, he eventually falls asleep while waiting for more news. The next morning, Miggy suddenly tells him that another alien is nearby. Shin gets angry and blames Miggy, saying his parents are in danger, even though Miggy said they would be safe near the beach. Miggy calmly replies that he only spoke based on probability and never said anything was completely certain. He then tells Shin to focus on the enemy in front of them. Shin grabs a knife, ready to help fight. Soon the door unlocks and someone enters the house. Shin is ready to attack, but he becomes shocked when he sees his mother walk in. Deep inside, he knows something is wrong, but he cannot accept it. Confused and shaking, he welcomes Nabucco home and asks why she is not with his father. Miggy quietly tells him that this is not his mother, but a parasite. Shin refuses to believe it. In his confusion, Shin holds the knife in front of Miggy, stopping him from transforming. He desperately calls out to his mother, but the parasite does not care about his feelings. Suddenly, she transforms and stabs Shin straight through the heart. Shin collapses to the floor while still unable to accept the truth. The parasite leaves, believing Shin will die, but Miggy realizes there is still a chance to save him. Shin's heart is badly damaged, so Miggy creates a new one and places it inside his chest, manually making it beat. While Shin remains unconscious, Miggy slowly heals him and eventually returns to his right arm. Shin stays unconscious for several days, which makes Murano worried. Meanwhile, Miggy continues taking care of him and even feeds him while he sleeps. Finally, after a few days, Shin wakes up, although he is still very weak. Soon he realizes that he no longer needs his glasses, which feels very strange to him. Shin decides to wash up, and while doing that, he notices a scar on his chest. The scar reminds him of the terrible incident. His heart suddenly hurts, and he breaks down because of the painful memory. Just then, the phone rings. When he answers it, he learns that his father has been admitted to a hospital. Shin feels relieved that his father is still alive and quickly leaves to see him.